Welcome back. The New South Wales Premier has apologised after revealing he wore a Nazi uniform to his 21st birthday party 20 years ago. Dominic Perrottet says he feels deeply ashamed, the admission coming just 71 days before the state election. For more, we're joined by Shadow Assistant Treasurer Stuart Robert and Independent MP Dr Sophie Scomps. Good morning to both of you. Hope you both had a good break. Great to have you with us. Stuart, let's start with your good self. Is this criticism fair?
Frankly, yes. It's unacceptable now. It's unacceptable in the past to have anything to do with a regime that is considered one of the most murderous, atrocious regimes on the face of the earth. Just ask Prince Harry. It is completely unacceptable. Now, the Premier has said that it happened a long time ago. I think we all accept that. But it's still unacceptable. But he's owned it. He's apologised. He's stood up. But let's be very, very clear. The history of what the Nazi Party did is so abhorrent. We should always remember what it did. That's why we have Holocaust museums. And we should always seek to disassociate ourselves in every way from it.
Yeah. Sophie, was this just a stupid mistake?
Look, I agree with what Stuart just said. There's a part of me that says, oh, he was 20, he was a young man, his brain was not fully developed, but then the rest of me just says, absolutely not. How could you come to that decision? We'd all seen Sound of Music. We all know who chooses to be a Nazi, honestly, and it doesn't sound like a very fun party either.
Exactly right. I had a 21st birthday party and I decided who was going to come and what they were going to be dressed as, and not in my wildest dreams would I say, why don't you come as a Nazi?
Well, that's the thing. It was his party. He decided to wear the Nazi uniform, and it doesn't sound much fun having an SS, agent strutting around a party.
Absolutely not. Hey, Stuart, he was pressured to go public with this after being contacted by a cabinet colleague. Do you think there's a motive here 70-odd days out from the state election?
Well, who would have thought New South Wales politics, with all of its comings and goings, its left and its right factions, we're approaching an election, leadership rumblings. So, of course, there's something in there. There's something untoward in that respect. But all power to the Premier. He came out on the front foot, owned it, apologised, as he should. Leaders make mistakes. We all do. Full credit to the Premier for owning what he did, but let's all be very, very clear. This is not something we play games with. This is so abhorrent. We should always remember it in that light. No,
I completely agree with you there, Stuart. Let's move on. The Victorian Premier is also making headlines this morning, ruling out a state funeral for Cardinal George Pell.
No, and there won't be a state memorial service. I couldn't think of anything that would be more distressing for victim survivors than that.
Sophie, he was pretty clear there, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, and I agree with him 100%. Absolutely. It would be so distressing for both survivors and for those who did not survive. I mean, it would be abhorrent.
Yeah. Stuart, what do you think? It's a far cry from how Peter Dutton and former Liberal leaders have responded to the Cardinal's death. Will you be going to his funeral?
I've never met Cardinal Pell, so it would not be appropriate for me to go to his funeral because I don't know the man and not a part of the Catholic Church. Now, questions of state funerals in this case is a question for state premiers, and the Premier's made himself very clear. Normally we have a state funeral for Australians who've served the country in a very substantial fashion. Cardinal Pell has served the world through the work he's done with the Catholic Church, but perhaps not in the same way viscerally as Australians see other Australians who step up and serve. So a question for the Victorian Premier. I think he's made his position pretty clear. I think the Vatican's having a funeral and there'll be opportunities for Australians if they so wish to be involved.
So you don't think he deserves a state funeral?
Always very difficult as to who gets state funerals and who don't, but they tend to be iconic Australians who've served in Australia, serving Australians over a long period of time. And whilst Cardinal Pell has done that within his congregation, but has spent a lot of his time overseas doing substantial work, it's probably appropriate we keep state funerals for Australians who've spent their entire service here in Australia. But these are judgment calls, and Premier Andrews has made his call.
Yeah, either way, it's brought up some very painful memories for those victims. But finally, how much would you pay to avoid a long line? Get this, a Sydney man has splashed more than $150 to get his hands on what are called Cinnabons. Yeah, hiring someone to stand in the hours-long queue at the store opening. They're very, very popular, these Cinnabons, as you're seeing right there. Hey, Sophie, what queues would you pay to avoid?
Look, I've got to say I'm probably quite partial to a cinnamon bun as well. I've never heard of cinnabons, but I think I've got a big thing for lime cordial at the moment, so it might be lime cordial tickets. They're homegrown boys from the Northern Beaches.
That's
from
very
our
hip
area.
of you, Sophie.
Oh, look, I hope my saying that I like a lime cordial doesn't bring their reputation down, actually.
OK, Stuart, what about yourself?
Well, it's not going to be Cinnabons. I mean, life's pretty expensive at present, so I'm not too sure I'll be paying anyone to stand in line for me. But if push came to shove, I'm thinking maybe an ABBA comeback tour or the Beach Boys. But if I got front row at Bon Jovi, yeah, I think I might have to cross the line and stump up there.
We're halfway there. Yes. Oh, yes. Look at this. Bon Jovi doing what he does best. I think I'd pay someone to stand in line at the bar. I hate lining up for a drink.
Yeah, kids are never good.
Kids are never good, apparently, but you can scan something now on the table and they bring it out to you. That's what the kids do these days.
Oh, good idea.
Good idea. All right, guys, living on a prayer. Stuart, thanks so much. Enjoy your